Welcome to Passion and Profit. If you're a small business owner or solo entrepreneur, this episode is for you. It would not only help you achieve your business goals, but it will also help you enjoy the process. Let's get started.
You start to figure out what would be valuable. What can you bring to the table as part of that? And then you start to work on and build that. And I have found that that is a great way to open a lot of things up over time. You will find out about things that other people just don't know about. It's the hidden market. It's an enormous hidden market because business moves at the speed of trust.
Passion and Profit with your host, Delmith Morales, the podcast for makers and manufacturers. Hi everyone, welcome to Passion and Profit. I'm your host, Delmith. This podcast is created by Inventora, the all-in-one inventory system for makers and manufacturers. Today, we're going to be talking with Amber Christian. She is the owner of the Handmade Seller magazine, and she has a lot of experience with handmade businesses. So I would love to hear her story. That's why I invited you. Amber, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here, and I've been a fan of Inventora for a while now. We've talked for the last few years since I've had the magazine, so I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, thank you so much. To start, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your background. Who's Amber? What have you done in the past few years?
So I actually have a pretty unique background. My background is actually in technology and finance first, and the artisan world came second for me. So I actually spent over 20 years integrating systems for Fortune 500 companies in the finance and technology areas. And so I came to that actually before I bought Handmade Seller magazine. So it gives me some unique perspectives, having done so much work with systems and technology over the years. And I also have my own artisan pop-up food business that I do. So a few times a year, I actually sell as part of that business. That's about all the capacity I have. I'd like to do more, but one only has so much time, right?
Yeah, wow. I love that. For me, like someone in the tech situation and all of that, probably won't like the handmade stuff. How did that happen for you?
How did that all happen? Yes. So actually, we would have to rewind a little bit. My grandmother was an artist. She did oil paintings. And so my entire childhood growing up, she used to have me paint with her. And I tell you, I have no talent when it comes to this, but according to her, everything I did was amazing. So I came, it was so cute. She was so sweet. And I came with this really deep love and appreciation for what artists do. In so many cases, they're creating something from nothing. It takes a certain amount of inspiration. It takes a lot of skills to kind of put all these different pieces together to create these truly unique products. And so growing up, I had an appreciation for what that world looked like because of my grandmother. Then as an adult, what I also started to do is I started to notice I was gravitating toward what artisans do because they're more unique products. So it can be anything and everything from the jewelry I wear. I love scarves. I love candles. Like I started really moving away from that consumer mass-produced stuff because I started to notice how chemically it was and how it's like, you can get that anywhere. And I wanted both my home and my experiences to be filled with unique things. I always call them my treasures. And so for me, that's how this kind of intersection all came together, was a deep love and appreciation for artisan products that I've had my whole life.
Oh, I love that. When you have a passion because of your grandma, you were saying, right?
Yeah.
It's something so sweet, and it's going to be something that you're going to have forever with you, right?
Exactly.
And I believe that most handmade people that I have been talking with, they started like that, probably learning from someone in their family, and that since they were little, that I don't know, it's so much a huge part of their lives that they want to keep going with that and make something from it. And that's the good part of handmade, because if you find a passion, you are going to make everything happen, right? It doesn't matter if you don't make a lot of profit, or I don't know, but if you are enjoying what you do, that's all that matters. And that's something that I really enjoy about handmade. So I know that you also, besides all of the things that you already mentioned, you have the Handmade Seller magazine. So what is the Handmade Seller magazine?
Sure. So, Handmade Seller Magazine is actually something I bought a couple of years ago. The magazine was shut down a few years back. It had been produced for a little over 5 or 6 years. And then she also had an artisan business. And so she had to make some tough decisions about where am I going to focus my efforts. And so she had decided to shut the magazine down. So I actually came along and bought it. And then I started the process of rebuilding. So now, what is Handmade Seller Magazine? I'm going to talk about that in two pieces. Historically, Handmade Seller Magazine was a digital publication that was produced and sent out via our website and to our subscriber set. That's what it was in the past. Now, what it has become now is it is really becoming a media company to provide education and content for artisans that are seeking to build thriving businesses. We do this through the power of storytelling, case studies, and a lot of the original content that we write. So we had a little bit of, what was the legacy, and then where are we headed now as an organization?
I love that. And what made you buy the Handmade Seller magazine? What was like the incentive that brought that to you?
Yeah, why buy a defunct publication? Yeah, I sometimes ask myself. What are you doing?
Another thing to your plate.
Right. I've worked in the small business world for a long time, right? So I talked about, I did a lot of systems implementations for large companies. And that was all done as me as an independent consultant in my own small company. And so I spent so many years intimately understanding the challenges of being a small company, trying to, first of all, survive and hopefully eventually thrive as a small company. And so there are a lot of tactics and strategies that you'll read about are really aimed for larger companies or people with endless budgets. And I found that even as a small company before, it was really hard to just get practical advice, to get past the clickbait, to get past, the outright sales pitch on everything, and to just actually find practical advice that I could do something with, and that I could even understand, that didn't make me feel stupid. Like, we've all been there where you turn something on and they're talking about things and you're like, we're just going to turn that off. Yeah, I have no idea what they're talking about. And I mean, same for me too. And so I really saw this opportunity to help other small business owners figure out what's the right business for them, help them understand how technology and business world changes affect them so that they can make the right decisions to confidently go forward in business. And realizing, and with so many disproportionately being women, that how do you make a change for a lot of women? Help them run better businesses. Mm-hmm. That helps the whole household. That helps all of us if we can run better businesses and stronger businesses.
Oh, I love that. And you're so right about now that we have social media and everything it's on the internet, it's overwhelming. Honestly, it's so hard to say, okay, I'm going to follow this page. And then you came up with another one and say, oh, let's follow this one too. And you have tons of information in just right there in a few seconds. You can find a lot of things. And maybe it's a good idea, like you say, okay, I know that the Handmade Seller magazine has everything I need. They have tips, they have advice about X, Y, and Z things. And to have just one place to rely on, I think that's perfect. And I'm so happy to for you to have that mindset, because a lot of handmade business owners, they're lost and they don't know what to do. So if they find something like this magazine, it can be a release for them, and it can be something that it's going to help them thrive, like you said.
hmm And it's going to give them ideas, knowing that the lens that I'm coming from is trying to help educate and inform,
Mhm.
uh, and trying to do that through the power of case studies. And I think that is also, I think, interesting for people too, because you learn a lot through the power of other people's stories and what they did and how they did it. Because we also all know we've seen so much generic advice, or I don't know if you've seen this, but I'll go look at, oh, the beginning steps of what I should do for marketing, and the 60 item checklist, and I'm just sorry, gone, mentally checked out. It was like, that is not practical. If I can get about 3 things done for my marketing plan, I'm happy. But what are those 3 things? How do I pick what those 3 things should be for me as a business owner? And so I seek to try to bring information so that people can feel comfortable with the decisions. Because I think you're right. A lot of us can feel lost. Like, they're like, oh, well, if I don't do these 48 things, and these people that say they're experts are going to say, if I don't do those 48 things, it's going to fail. Oh, and then an algorithm changes and, oh, look, your reach just drops overnight. Oops.
Yeah.
And so I want to really help people make sure they're thinking about the decision so that they go, I know why I did that. And I'm okay with that. So then I can then learn from that. If something doesn't work with that, I will now have learned from that because I know why I made those decisions. So it's about trying to help them with a little more intentionality, and also demystify a lot of topics that can feel really threatening, particularly from some of the tech, the finance, the businessy side of things.
Yes. And like you said before, and I am a truly believer of that, is that you learn more when you hear the stories from other people. It's better because you know that they lived that, and they had a problem and they solved it, or they didn't solve it but they tried to do something. And it's better when you have a community, and I believe that the Handmade Seller magazine have that, and that can tell you their experiences well. And also this podcast is for that, because I love to have people come over and tell their story, not talk about a specific topic. It's just about learning of how have you been doing everything that you have done in these years. So for me, that's all that matters. It's more valuable than saying, oh, let's see this reel that says that I have to do a lot of things to make my business succeed, right? And I know that social media can help us a lot, because you're going to see trends, you're going to see things that you can implement. But a lot of people, and we have to be careful, because they are just doing content to go viral, right? Or right?
Yes.
It doesn't make sense. So if you're following those people that are just saying a lot of things with nonsense, just come here to the podcast, follow the Handmade Seller magazine, and it's going to be better, right?
Well, it's going to be more sane. I think
Yeah.
that's more of what I'd say to people. It's just going to feel more sane. You're not always trying to catch the next wave. It's about understanding and talking to people that have been there, done that, and that our aim is actually not to help you go viral. I don't want you to go viral.
Yeah.
That's a whole different beast. And then when you come off of going viral, how do you know what the slowdown looks like? And that, so I really want to help you build a steady business that you feel comfortable with. And that for me is really more of what it's about, and where people can really associate and create that thing that's going to provide longevity for them in their business. Because at some point the love runs out. And I'm sure people will know that too. They're like, or you hit burnout or you hit other things. And how do you make sure as you're thinking through and building things that you know how you'll be able to ride that out, because you're building a sustainable business. You're building something that is truly an asset for you. That's a whole different game in the things that we're talking about than trying to just get a whole bunch of sales at once and then whatever. And it's not the gimmicky fake things. It's really trying to help small business owners grow.
Yeah, love that. So I know that you, when you bought the Handmade Seller magazine, and I know that you have challenges, right, with your business. I know it happens to everyone. So I would love to know if you had any challenges and how did you solve them?
Well, everyone, the second you get through one set of challenges, the next set shows up, right? For me, it's been figuring out what is going to be the magazine's revenue model in both the short and longer run. So when I first started, I bought a magazine and then I said to myself, what have you done? You just bought a magazine. No, I'm totally serious. I sort of was like, what are you thinking, Amber? Like, well, no, you kind of knew what you were thinking, but then the reality sinks in. You're like, that might be you too, on the other end of people saying, oh, hey, I went to a show and I started selling my things, and then people started wanting to buy them again. And I'm like, what was I thinking? Or we all get into that at some point and realize we're like, and in fact, actually, we started a whole podcast that we'll get into later. That's Help I Started a Business Now What? That is address a lot of that early stuff.
That's a great name.
But for me, it's been, what is an appropriate revenue model? That's really an interesting question to ask yourself as a publication, because if everything's free forever, then the subscribers are the product. And you have to be thoughtful about, well, what does that look like? And I started working with some early advertisers, but there's a lot of people that want things that I'm not willing to do or to compromise or give them from my audience. And so trying to build an appropriate, it's going to be a combination of ads and subscriptions in the future. So starting next year, we'll go back to a paid model. But really asking myself, what's going to allow me to build this business sustainably, especially given what's going on with publications. I mean, you just look around and what's happening in the publishing world, and so many of the old legacy models are going away. So for me, really, the challenge is, what does that really look like as a business? What is going to be sustainable? So I do a lot of the writing and podcasting now, but I have to get models created that are going to allow for a day when it's not just me, and starting to think about that. And so challenges is, how do you do those things in an era where a lot of the publishers are still legacy, and you're trying to craft a path forward that doesn't really look like how a lot of other people are doing their business. And I think people listening to that can think, oh, yeah, that feels like me. I'm trying to do that in this unique and different way that I don't see a lot of people do. And then trying to thoughtfully craft what that looks like, and to give yourself time to try things and make mistakes. And so I've had to try a variety of things to be like, oh, that's not how that really worked. Oh, that's not how this really works. And have this whole process be almost one of experimentation in trying to expand and grow the audience. So yeah, it's been really interesting. It's a lot of fun, actually, though, because I get the ability to take and translate some of these lessons in ways that I hope are quite helpful for readers, which is something I enjoy. And I've been getting a lot of feedback from people that say, wow, that's just really interesting. And I can see that it's making them think. And so one of those challenges is, how do I put forward content that will educate, but will also get you to stop and go, does that apply to me? Should I do something with that? Or maybe shouldn't I? Because I have a different strategy. And if I'm successful in that, that is what will really help over time, is in helping people quiet the noise and think as to what makes sense for their own business via the content we produce.
Oh, that's so good. It sounds very hard, to be honest, like to say, okay, what content should I do now? And it's just you're a magazine, so you have to do content every time. And I probably you enjoy that, but sometimes it's hard because it's a lot, right? And like you said, I love the mentality to say, okay, I'm going to give you content that can help you, but also content that make you think about what you're doing and to redo things in your business or try something new and to evaluate what you're doing and what you're not doing. I think that's the key and the value of the things that we read and learn as business owners. Um, when you are reading something, it has to make you feel something or think about what you're doing to be better, to improve, and all of that, right? And I love that you guys are doing that. It's super important. So I know that you already told us a little bit about this, but I know that the Handmade Seller magazine was shut down, and then you bought it and you opened everything again. I know that's a challenge. And what strategies did you use to start gaining the brand exposure again and to make it like say, hey, we're here again? What did you do?
What did I do? Where does one begin, right? So we started with the first thing I had to do is decide on what did I think made sense as a publication schedule. So the magazine was produced monthly before, and I contemplated the idea of producing that in-depth quality every month. And I asked myself, one, is that sane for us to try and do? But two, is that really going to benefit business owners? Do they have that much time to absorb? It's like you have no time to absorb and implement before you get the next batch. So I wasn't really sure that monthly made sense for me. So we decided to do a quarterly cadence, which I feel like that's really our sweet spot. So what we do is we produce the magazine quarterly, and then in the off months, we write other types of content pieces that we might not have room to do in the magazine, or other things happen in between, newsworthy things or other people we want to feature. And so we do those in the off months. So it's turned out to be a really nice blend and cadence. And so that was the first piece. How often am I going to publish this? So once I had that down, then it was starting to figure out, we initially started with a few freelance writers. I had no connections in this world. Like I was starting from nothing. And that's really, that's kind of intimidating. I was starting with a whole lot of courage of going, here, let's see how this goes. And that was not easy. So I hired an editor to help me that first year, just in working with the artisan side of the stories and just helping us get our arms around a publication schedule, because she'd done some publishing before. I really hadn't, until I really kind of found my sea legs, as I'd say, on that process. And then I've taken over from there now that I'm comfortable. So we had that quarterly cadence. And then I also had to start to figure out, how do audiences find me? So my next step was starting to look outward a little bit. Once we figured out how to produce the magazine, I started going to a few trade shows. And what I really learned is I went to the H&H Americas show last year, and it's a fiber. It's fiber and other fiber-related type of things in the soft craft world. And what I really learned is I didn't find a single person that knew who Handmade Seller was. And I went, well, now this is interesting. It's a business magazine that nobody on the business side of the world, they didn't know about it. Because her strategy had been a lot of advertising through Pinterest and Facebook and going kind of directly to artisans, very different strategy for how to grow brand awareness. And in my previous world, one of the ways I learned you survive as a small business is through collaborations and relationships with other people. And so I chose to say, okay, what are the appropriate collaborations and relationships that I should be building, and start from there. And so that's actually the phase I'm still in. I'm not in a deploy a whole bunch of paid advertising phase, because there is so much room in the collaborations and relationship space. And that's something I want to challenge a lot of people listening to this is the default can be paid advertising, but that can be expensive. That can be very expensive. It can feel easier, but relationships are a very good way to go. Yeah. I mean, like I did an interview with Inventora last year, and that was an early relationship that I formulated. So then when you emailed me, hey, come on the podcast, yeah, let's just schedule the timing, because we already had a working relationship. And what you'll find as a business owner is opportunities just show up when you get good at building relationships with people. You advance so much faster in your business with relationships. Okay. And right? Because you want to be able to pick up the phone and be like, hey, I have a question. I'm stuck on something. Mm-hmm. Where you can be analyzing it to death yourself. You could make a phone call to someone that can help you and be like, oh, this. Oh. Or you can spend days stewing over it yourself. Like, well, you right? It's like, you decide. And so that's really one of the big things that I've been doing in the last year plus, is really just thoughtfully building more and more and more relationships with people.
I'm a partnership coordinator here at Inventora, so I know the power of relationships. When I started, Inventora didn't have this side of the business. They just did influencer marketing. And once we started doing partnerships, a lot of things came through because of that. And like you said, we worked together last year. And for me, it was like, hey, let's invite her. Let's hear her story, because it's good. Because I already know you. I already knew who you were, what you had, and what you have done. So it's so good for me to say, hey, let's catch up with her and have her on the podcast. And that's another engagement for our relationship, right? And exactly. I love it. It's so powerful. I'm not against influencer marketing. I know that's something that really, really works for different objectives of the business, different goals. But the relationships are going to help you for long-term situations. And like you said, I can come to you and say, hey, I need to write an article and I have no idea how to do it. Can you help me? And I know that you're going to help me, right? So those little things that you don't, first at the beginning is like you're introducing yourself and you don't know what the other person can teach you. I think relationships can make that happen, and it's very powerful. I totally agree with you.
And the part of the reason that you build up the relationships and you build up, the ability to collaborate too, is what you don't realize is that you could be someone's perfect answer. Mm-hmm. They just need to know you're there. And that's what I did in my previous industry. I did a particular kind of software consulting. And I realized that people that didn't come from that industry, that had to interface and interact with that industry, needed an expert in that industry. So I went and made friends with them because they had someone to call when they had questions about something. Mm-hmm. And they used that. And that opened doors and opportunities and all sorts of things, because I became this valued relationship. And you can do that as a products person. Let's say you're a candle maker. Maybe you should be building relationships with interior design organizations that might have designers that want to use your products. Mm-hmm. Or, every industry, you start to think about, who am I a really good answer for? And for them, they look good when they have me as the answer. And that will help you start going, oh, this is who I should talk to. This is who I should talk to. This is playing the long game. It's not going to bring you business immediately.
No.
Do not try to make this transactional. Nope. You start to figure out what would be valuable. What can you bring to the table as part of that? And then you start to work on and build that. And I have found that that is a great way to open a lot of things up over time. You will find out about things that other people just don't know about. It's the hidden market. It's an enormous hidden market because business moves at the speed of trust.
Mm-hmm.
Memorize that one.
Yeah.
It moves at the speed of trust. When they have situations or they need urgent things or they need answers, they're going to call the people they trust. So to the extent you can kind of build up, feed, and nurture that set of relationships, it's quite powerful to you as a business. And a lot of people don't approach it with quite that level of intentionality. But it's amazing what happens when you do. So I appreciate your thoughts on building partnerships and how that unlocks things, because you have seen the same thing for Inventora and how it's advancing your business.
Absolutely. And I always say, when you're a product business or a service business, the mouth to mouth, like, it's the most powerful tool. And that starts with relationships. And it's, like you say, it's going to be the best way to market your business, because someone that trusts your business, your brand, is going to tell other people, like, say, hey, if you want a candle, I know a girl that makes candles and they're perfect. You should try them, because that person already tried what you have done. So that's the best way to market your business. And I love it because people, and it's free. That's the best part, I think. It's free. People are just buying from you, and they're going to tell other people that they should start buying from you as well. And that's why the customer service and relationships and keep your customers happy, it's all about. That's why it's so important. But like, returning to what we have been talking about, the partnerships, relationships are the ones that are going to really nurture your business, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think I love how the conversation turned around. I didn't know that we were going to end up talking about relationships, but it's amazing. I love that. And I just want you to, if you have a last piece of advice for our audience, I would love for you to tell us that right now.
Okay, so some last pieces of advice. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice is understand that the flow and the spirit and the energy around business is much more than making and listing a product online. Understand there are all the, and you can say, oh no, I understand that. Oh, but I see how all y'all are talking on social media about, oh, I listed it, nobody sold. Did you do anything else with it? No.
Yeah.
Make sure that understand, and it's okay if it's hard. It's hard for most people, but truly recognize and think about those mechanisms where it's more than just making the product. And if you can embrace that there's all these other parts of the process and you're not going to know them, but embrace it, you're not going to know them. Ask questions, be open to learning and improving on them. You will advance so much quicker than resisting having to do them. So just try to say, hey, it's okay. I'm not going to know everything about it. I'm going to make a few mistakes, but I'm going to try this stuff anyway. And so that my biggest advice is try to move yourself from that, close, I don't want to do it, to the, okay, I'm going to be open and curious, and some of this is going to work and some of it's not. And I know that before I go into it. That way, when some things don't work, I don't get upset because not everything's going to work. It's business. You're still figuring it out. So that would be the biggest piece of advice I would give people.
I love that. Yeah. It's to not be afraid, right? I think that's so important. Test the waters, and if it didn't work, it didn't work, and that's it. Let's turn the page and move forward, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. So thank you so much, Amber, for your time. We really appreciate to hearing your story and all the experience that you have. I know it's going to be very valuable for me and for other people that are listening. So everyone, there you have my conversation with Amber. Please go check out Amber and the Handmade Seller magazine in the link of the show notes. I hope you find this episode helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a follow, and if you like the episode, please share it with your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time. If you're interested to learn more about Inventora and how can we help you centralize your customers and suppliers' information, visit Inventora.com.